Hello and welcome to My Finance Teacher. This is a series of videos on principles of economics. This video is about real versus nominal GDP, as well as the comparison of real GDP across countries and across time, as well as the attempt of trying to compare the standard of living across time and across countries using real GDP. Some of the main reasons for the calculation of the values of GDP is that we want to use the measurements of GDP and see how our standard of living changes across time, or see how standard of living compares across countries. However, there are some factors that make it difficult to compare the standard of living measured by GDP across time and across countries. For example, price changes make it difficult to compare GDP across time, since prices change from one year to another. In that case, instead of using current prices, which change from one year to another, we might use the prices of a reference base year and calculate real GDP, which could be a more useful measurement when comparing standard of living across time. So using real rather than nominal GDP helps us deal with the problem of changing prices. What we want is to isolate these price changes so that we see the changes in production from one year to another. And it is the output that we have produced in the country that enables us to satisfy our needs with those goods and services produced. Next, another factor that makes it difficult to compare the standard of living across time is the change in population. Even if the output produced in the country increases by, say, 60% compared to last year, however, if the population doubles, that output have to be divided by many more people in the country, meaning that on average each person will be able to enjoy less of the goods and services. So changes in the population also make it difficult to compare the standard of living across time. In this case, what we might do is calculate real GDP per capita rather than simply real GDP. And real GDP per capita is equal to real GDP divided by population. What it would give us is essentially an average real income per person, which is a little more useful in comparing the standard of living across time. Let's have a look at some examples to make this video less theoretical and a little bit more clear. Let's have a look at 2 years. 2010 will be our base year, and the other year that we're going to compare it with is 2016. Let's say this is a simple island country that produces only apples, bananas, coconuts, boats, kites, jungle tours, and toys. And in this table you see the prices of those goods and services both in 2010 and 2016, as well as the quantities produced. Let's say 2010 is going to be our base year. Let's say population in 2010 was 120 citizens on this island, and the population in 2016 became 140 citizens. Let's practice by calculating the nominal GDP and real GDP for 2016, as well as the percentage change in real GDP per capita from 2010 to 2016. In this way we will try to estimate the changes, maybe the improvement in the standard of living from 2010 to 2016 in this island country. Let's start with the nominal GDP in 2016. that would simply be the multiplication of the quantities of these products produced by their current prices in 2016. And the sum of all of those products, the sum of all of those multiplications, will give us the nominal GDP in 2016. So 450 apples produced multiplied by the price of $5.50 per apple in 2016 plus 550 bananas produced by their price multiplied by their price and so on gives us a nominal GDP of $111,530 in 2016. To find the real GDP in 2016, instead of the current prices, we use the prices of the base year with the same quantities of the year 2016. What we get is the real GDP in 2016 of $130,530. Third question was about the percentage change in real GDP from real GDP per capita from 2010 to 2016. In that case, we would need to find the real GDP per capita for those years. Since 2010 is the base year, the real GDP will be equal to nominal GDP for the base year. So real GDP per capita in the base year in 2010 is going to be basically its nominal GDP, which is the quantities of the products produced multiplied by their prices. All of that added up across all of the products and divided by the population in that year. So 420 apples produced multiplied by the price of an apple in 2010 plus 520 bananas produced multiplied by the price of a banana in 2010 and so on, divided by the population in the base year, gives us a real GDP per capita, or sort of a real average income per person of $890.08. Real GDP per capita in 2010 is real GDP in real GDP per capita in 2016 would be the real GDP in 2016, which we have already calculated, divided by the population in 2016, which would give us $739.50. So the change of real GDP per capita from 2010 to 2016 is actually a negative one. It decreased from 890 to 739.5, and this change is a negative 16.9%. So I hope this example clears up a little bit of the theory that we've been discussing so far. Next, how about the comparison of real GDP across countries? There are also some factors that make it difficult. Some of the factors are that different countries use different currencies. Besides that, goods and services in different countries are valued at different prices. For example, let's say we're looking at our country and their country, and the exchange rate of, say, dollars per pound is $2 per pound. Let's assume that we only produce apples in both of the countries. The price of an apple here is $5, the price of an apple there is, let's say, 3 pounds. Say only 200 apples were produced last quarter in our country, whereas 300 apples were produced last quarter in the other country. Given the price and the quantity, our GDP last quarter would be $1,000, whereas their GDP last quarter would be 900 pounds, the quantity of apples multiplied by the price. According to the exchange rate on the financial markets, 900 pounds has a value of $1,800. If we compare that with the value of GDP in our country, it might seem that GDP in the other country is 80% greater. However, if we look at the actual output level, the other country has only produced 50% more apples rather than 80% more apples. Hence, as we said, there are difficulties in comparing standard of living across countries using real GDP values. And the difficulty is, as we mentioned, due to the difference between the actual purchasing power of the currencies versus the exchange rate of those currencies at the financial markets. As we see from this example, a pound can only buy 2/3 more than a dollar, whereas on the financial markets, the pound can buy $2. Because of this discrepancy, there are also discrepancies in the measurements of GDP, of real GDP values. Besides that, even if we avoid all of these difficulties, real GDP per capita is not a perfect measure for the standard of living for a numerous number of other factors, such as household production that is not counted as part of GDP but still adds to our standard of living. Underground economic activity that also might add to our standard of living is also not calculated as part of real GDP. The quality of our life in terms of the amount of leisure that we have, the health that we have, the life expectancy, environment quality, and all of the political freedom that we enjoy, all of that is not included in the measurements of GDP. Hence again, although it is useful to use GDP to compare the standard of living across time and across countries, it is very far from a perfect measurement of this standard of living. Thank you for your attention. I wish you luck.